Hi, I'm Sam Hunter. This is 721 Live, the media arm of 721 Ministries. I'm glad that you joined us today. Thank you for being with us. Today's going to be different. I'm not going to teach today. I'm going to talk. Now, I hope when I'm teaching, I am just talking to you as a friend, but today I want to share with you my experience of going to Israel, war-torn Israel. Israel on a war footing. This past December 2024, I traveled to Israel for 8 days on the ground in a solidarity trip with 14 other Jewish folks, none of whom did I know before I took the trip except for the rabbi who organized it. My friend over the last couple of years in Charleston, Rabbi Yossi Refson, who is in charge of the Chabad denomination of the Jewish sect in Charleston, a very unique part of the Jewish religion, organized this trip. I got an email about a year and a half ago that he was organizing a solidarity trip to go to Israel to show support and love for their Jewish brethren. And as soon as I saw the email, I said to my wife, Dina, I want to go. I just felt a stirring. I want to go. And she said, I think you should go. And we both agreed immediately that both of us should not go because if something were to happen, it was not an entirely safe trip. If something were to happen, we didn't want both of us to get blown up. But I wanted to go, and the trip was postponed from the summer to December. December was a very bad timing for me. I'd had a heart attack in November, and but when this trip was set for this early in December, I said, Dina, I've got to go. I want to go. And so I did. And so I want to share with you my experiences. The most difficult trip I've ever taken, the most heart-wrenching trip I've ever taken, the most heart-wrenching experience that I can remember in any time. At the same time, exhilarating at times and uplifting and heartwarming. The people that we interacted with, we met with Army folks, we met with wounded veterans. We met with families of the victims. We met with families of the hostages. We met with hostages who had been freed. We met with military, generals, colonels. We even met with the number 2 guy in Israel, or I should say the number 1 assistant to Bibi Netanyahu. It was an unbelievable experience, and at times I wasn't prepared for some of the emotional difficulties. I wasn't prepared for it. It was not a mission trip. It was not a vacation. It was a solidarity trip on the ground, 8 days in war-torn Israel. And I want to share with you exactly what happened. Now, Israel is a fascinating country. And if you have not traveled to Israel, then you won't be able to entirely understand what I'm saying. But I've traveled to England several times, to Italy several times. I've been to France more than once. I've been to Paris. I've been to down to Spain and Barcelona. I've been to Greece. And these are all beautiful, wonderful countries, and I love traveling to them. But when I went to Israel for the first time, I've now been 3 times. My wife has been 3 times. We've been twice together. When I went the first time, I realized that this was different. You see, I did not grow up reading in a Bible about Paris or about Rome or about any Italy or Spain or Greece or London or England and Northern England, any of those places. I didn't grow up reading about those. And so when I got to Israel, it was a sense of coming home to a place I'd never been. And so if you've never been to Israel, it is a beautiful country. As a matter of fact, the last trip that Dean and I made, we actually hiked with several other friends. We hiked across Israel from Nazareth over to Capernaum, which was called the Jesus Trail, because Jesus left his hometown in Nazareth and then traveled over to Capernaum to set up his ministry there. And we walked that, and it was a fascinating walk to be on the ground. And when we left, we both said, let's just come back to Israel and vacation. Let's just come back and vacation. It's that beautiful a country. It's a place that I would want to go even if I wasn't going to take the religious tours or have some guide with us. Just go back and just enjoy the country. Now, I want to show you in comparison to South Carolina. And by the way, if you're listening to this on one of our podcasts, one of our audio podcasts, I really encourage you to find us on YouTube, find us on Vimeo, 721 Live, Sam Hunter, and watch this, because I'm going to show you some pictures. I'm going to show you some short videos, some of which are not easy to watch, because as I say, there were experiences that were so difficult emotionally, and then there were some that were so exhilarating. So if you're listening to this on audio, I encourage you to find us on a video and listen to it so that you can get the pictures and see exactly what it was that we were doing. But if you're watching now, you'll see that Israel is a very small country. It's a fourth the size of South Carolina. Now, South Carolina is my home state, and it's a small state, and everyone would know that in the United States of America. But Israel is even smaller. It's a fourth the size. It is longer, but it's so narrow, 80 miles at its widest point. And what I want you to imagine is, here we are in South Carolina. We're surrounded by North Carolina, Knoxville, Georgia, Florida down on the end down here. Then you've got Alabama, you've got Mississippi, you've got Virginia. Imagine that you live in South Carolina, and each one of these states around you is your sworn enemy. They don't just hate you. They have put in writing, they have stated they want to slaughter you. They want to wipe you out. They don't want you to exist on this planet. And why? Because you're Jewish. So imagine you live in this state, and everywhere around you are your sworn enemies who have stated publicly, put it in writing, we want to demolish your country. You're going to have a different mindset about living. You're going to have a different mindset about how you respond to terrorist attacks, which I will give you a little bit more on that. I do want to take this opportunity just to take a minute and talk about how beautiful Israel is. You've got Jerusalem in the middle. It's up on a little mountain range, and it is hauntingly beautiful. I've been to Rome. I've been to Paris. I've been to Florence. I've been to London. I've been to older cities that have their own unique personality. Jerusalem, with the Jerusalem limestone, all the buildings are the same type of stone. When the sun hits it in the morning and the sun hits it in the afternoon, it is so breathtaking. And again, it's somewhat hauntingly beautiful. Inside Jerusalem, you've got the old village where you've got the Arab quarter, the Jewish quarter, the Christian quarter, the Armenian quarter. They're all right there in this old little village. And as you travel around Israel, you're just amazed at the diversity of ethnicities. You see Jewish, you see Arabs, you see people traveling from all over the world. Everywhere you go, there are tour buses, people traveling from everywhere to experience Jerusalem. Now, on this trip, because we're in a war footing, there were no tourists, no buses, no anybody. Only El Al, the national airline for Israel, is flying in, because the others won't, because their employees have boycotted Israel. That's because they don't understand Israel, and they don't understand the Jewish population of Israel. And I'm going to speak to that in just a moment. But you've got this hauntingly beautiful Jerusalem, which is similar to the ancient holy city of Rome in that sense of its age. You fly into Tel Aviv, which is a modern city. The hotel we stayed in for 2 nights in Tel Aviv, within 10 blocks there were 6,000 startup companies, and so many of those high tech. So Tel Aviv is a thriving city. You've got the beautiful Mediterranean. On the opposite side, just 80 miles away, you've got the Jordan River. You've got the Dead Sea, the Salt Sea, which is in itself an experience. And on the other side, you see the banks of Jordan, of the country of Jordan. As you come down to the bottom, you've got what they call the Negev, and it's desert. Very little population down in this area. You'll see the Gaza Strip, which will come into play, obviously, because this was all about the October 7th, 2023 Hamas terrorist attack. But as you move up north, then you get into the Galilee area where Jesus was born and raised and spent most of his time. And it is like my hometown of Greenville in South Carolina. Rolling hills, green, beautiful lakes. The Sea of Galilee is breathtaking. So it's worth going just to vacation. But we were not on a vacation. We were there to show solidarity to the population of Israel, these Jewish friends from Charleston, South Carolina, traveling all the way to Israel to spend 8 days on the ground to show them that they're not alone. And everywhere we went, everyone we met with would say to us, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. We feel so alone. We feel so isolated. We feel like the world is against us because of the way the news agencies have reported this. And then I would walk up, because I was the only Christian on this trip, and I would walk up to whoever the presenter was or whoever we were meeting with, and I would say, I'm Christian, and I want you to know that my Christian friends back in America, we support you too. And they would grab me, and they would hug me, and they wouldn't let go. To have that sense, I had no idea they would feel that way. I had no idea they were on this war footing. I just thought we were going and everything was behind us, and we were going for this trip. We would experience something. We'd have some interviews we'd experience, but I had no idea what to expect. October 7th, 2023 was Israel's 9/11. 1,200 people slaughtered, 800 plus of those civilians. Hamas came across the border from the Gaza Strip. It was a well-planned, well-executed attack. They came in with ground forces, they came in on motorized hang gliders. They came in on boats. As a matter of fact, when they came around on the boats and came up on the beach in Israel, there were 2 young boys fishing. They shot them dead. They just slaughtered you. The things that you find out that Hamas did, they're not, you would say they're animals. But animals would not even do that to their own kind. They are subhuman. And I'm not trying to take some position on the Jewish nation. No nation is perfect. I'm just telling you, Hamas is nothing but animals. And if anybody listening to this, if you think Hamas that what they did was blown out of proportion, or that Israel has lied or exaggerated, they took their own videos. You don't even have to go to Israel's videos or Israel's evidence, which they presented thousands of pages to the International Court justice system, documenting all the atrocities. Hamas took videos of it themselves, cheering, raping older women in front of their families, cutting off heads, slaughtering babies, putting babies in microwaves, the worst atrocities you can possibly imagine. These people are not even, they're so subhuman, they're not even animals. And I'm sorry to say it, because they are created in God's image, but it's hard for me to reconcile those two things. So October 7th, 2023 was Israel's 9/11. 1,200 killed, 254 hostages taken. 3,000 rockets were fired on that Saturday morning starting at 6:29. That's Shabbat. That's their holy day. It was also the last day of one of their festivals, one of their 7-day festivals. And so it was a well-planned, timed excursion, terrorist attack. They came in, they fired 3,000 rockets, which was just a cover, because most of those were intercepted by Israel's aerial defense missile dome system. But that was just a cover to then send in 3,000 terrorists, 1,200 elite, war-torn veteran military, and then the rest were just terrorists coming in and just slaughtering people. Started at 7/29, took Israel completely by surprise. There could be, and there are a lot of questions as to how this could have happened. That'll all be sorted out, I have no doubt. But when they came in through the Gaza Strip, the fence that surrounds it. They blew holes open with dynamite and with explosives. They came across, as I said, they came in with hang gliders, and they proceeded to just slaughter civilian after civilian. When I arrived in Israel, I arrived by myself, and the first thing I saw when I was coming into the arrivals hall, were this, and this is again, these are Sam's cell phone videos, so it's not very professional. But here's what I saw: these are posters of the hostages. I was so ignorant. I had no idea the hostage situation was what it was, even when I got to Israel. I'm embarrassed about my ignorance, but I didn't realize that everywhere you were going to go in Israel, you were going to see pictures of the hostages. And everywhere you went, you would see these posters that say, "Bring them home, bring them home." So just arriving at the airport was a shock to realize, in my ignorance, I'm going into a war zone here, and there are hostages, and these hostages are not hundreds of miles away in another country somewhere. They are maybe 50 miles away in the tunnels that Hamas has built. They're being hidden away, being treated as poorly as you can possibly imagine, raped, beaten. When we got there, there 254 had been taken originally. There were about 100 still remaining, and the officials would tell us we feel sure that half of those are dead. And they're just going to send back dead bodies at various times. The other thing that caught me as soon as I came in, because I bought a newspaper, the Jerusalem Post, was that every headline is about the war. Again, I did not realize a year later that I was going into a war zone. What I want to do today in this video is just talk to you about my experiences. Now, I didn't want this to be a slideshow where I'm showing you my vacation to Florida, your aunt and uncle or your grandparents doing that. I wanted to try to figure out a way to just communicate to you exactly what I experienced. And it won't be a long video. Just give me an opportunity to show you. And really, I'm going to concentrate on 2 days of my 8 days on the ground, because these were the 2 most meaningful days. Now, again, I hope I'll remember to say this more than once. If you dislike the Jews, if you dislike Israel, it's because you don't know them. It's because you haven't traveled there. You haven't spent time with them. All of my experiences with my Jewish friends, and when I took this trip, there were 14. As I said, the only one I knew was the rabbi. But quickly I became dear friends with all 14. There was a husband and wife, there was a mother with her 2 college-age daughters, and then the rest of us men. And they quickly became dear, dear friends. So if you don't like Jews, you think they're bad people, you think Israel is some kind of occupying imperialist country, you don't know them. And so I hope this will help shed some light on that. The first day when we flew in, we went to a rehabilitation military base, went to the rehabilitation hospital, and met with soldiers who had been wounded. And that was an incredible experience, very moving, very moving. Then we went to the National Blood Center, which is in a bomb shelter, because if you live in Israel, your National Blood Center has to be in a bomb shelter because it's going to get bombed. So that was the first day, and that was Monday. Tuesday, I was not prepared for what we would do on Tuesday. We got up, we went to the Shura military base, which is where they have their national morgue. And this started 2 days of emotional, gut-wrenching experiences, hearing firsthand what went on that day when 1,200 people were slaughtered. As a matter of fact, after we met, and I'm going to show you a video here in a second, just a short video of Bensi. But after our experience with Bensi, we had a break, and I called my wife just to say hello and tell her I was doing fine, and I burst into tears because it was so upsetting. Bensi that's short for Benjamin, and it is the Hebrew word there means sweet and strength, and that describes Bensi so well. He is a rabbinate. He is a rabbi in the military forces, in the IDF. He told us he didn't qualify physically to be a combat soldier. Instead, he's a rabbi. And he was in charge of the morgue on that day when 1,000 bodies came in body bags. 1,000 bodies. They have a capacity of 244 bodies. 1,000. He showed us around, and he would sweep his arms around the area, and he said there were body bags stacked up 3 and 4. They were coming in so fast we couldn't process them. They were in the hall stacked up, and he would say our intention in Israel, in the IDF, is to identify those bodies as fast as we can so that we can get the information to the families. And he said they were coming in so fast we could not process. We couldn't handle it. He told the story about a chocolate milk delivery truck pulled up because they were using anything to get bodies. These were civilians and military because they had no place to take them. The truck backs up. It's got the racks where they would put the milk jugs or whatever. And he said he pulled the bottom rack out, got the body bags out. As he went to pull the top rack out, all the body fluids and the blood of the bodies came just rushing down on top of him like he was under a waterfall. And he said, I just walked over to the side and I just got down on my knees and I started crying. And he said, I couldn't take it. I just couldn't take another minute. We were getting body bags with heads in them. We would open up a body bag. There'd be a little girl who'd been sawn in half. we'd get a body bag and it would have several parts in it. We would get a body bag and it'd be an older person who had their head cut off. He said it was just the most overwhelming thing that we've ever experienced. This was Bensi, who was a young man, and I'll show you this in just a minute. And I want you to hear his very quick, very short voice talking about a head that that Hamas tried to take back into Gaza so that they could auction it off for $10,000. It was rescued and brought back, but it had no teeth. It had nothing to identify, so they had to go to identify it by means of DNA. Bensi. And then after we talked with Bensi, then we met with Noah, which is a female Hebrew name, and she was in charge of the female bodies. And both Bensi and Noah, they had this angelic presence about them. They told us all about the horrors of that day, but they had this look that was just this peace that only God could give, that transcends all understanding. And Noah told us that when a female body would come in, if they had to send that body to somewhere else within the morgue to try to take the next step to identify it, if they couldn't identify it by tags or by looks or by visual or by any type, they might have to send it to another area for the DNA or the dental testing, whatever. One of her assistants would travel with that body bag wherever it went. They never left it alone. They never left a body bag in the hallway by itself. She was so sweet. She told us she had 7 children. She had a husband who was already in the reserves, and 2 sons who were in the military. When this happened, they were all called up. She was called up. So as she was leaving the house, she looked at her 15-year-old daughter and said, "You're in charge now. I don't know when I'll be back." And, of course, it was days before she came back. But if you live in Israel, this 15-year-old daughter, she said, "Don't worry, Mom, I got it. I'll take care of it." So just take a moment and listen to Bensi as he describes that day.
He says there's a head, just a head. He was taken on October 7th into Gaza. They tried selling it for $10,000. That head belongs to Adir Tar, a 19-year-old Golani soldier. When Adir Tar is brought to this building, there's no teeth, there's no way to identify him. What do we do in such a case? And that's when we move to our last resort, and that is DNA. We actually have a DNA lab here in this. And inside he says there's a head, just a head.
If you could have had the joy of being with Bensi and listening to him, not the joy, just the experience of being with him and understanding the sincerity with Bensi and Yossi and Noah and what they tried to do to help these bodies when they came in and treat them with dignity. That experience, as I said, when we finished, we had a small break. I called my wife, and I just broke into tears. I was just so emotionally overwrought at having seen this, having seen the places where they would bring the bodies, lay them out after they had prepared them best they could so the family could come and view. He said they had to take one body and duct tape it. That wasn't his words, but duct tape it together so that the family could not view the body, but at least they could see the shape of a body underneath the shroud. He said if a body bag had one number on it, that was a really good sign because that meant there was one body part inside that bag, which usually would mean one body. But if it had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, one had 100, where they were trying desperately to get those body parts all in the same body bag for one body. He said if it had more than one, you had to prepare yourself for what you were going to see when you opened up that body bag. So that first experience at that military morgue was gut-wrenching. And I thought that was a really emotionally difficult start of the day. And then later that day, we went to the National Crisis Hostage Center. And that is a 6-story building in the middle of Tel Aviv that's been set up for the families of the hostages. Again, everywhere you go in Israel, you see posters, bring them home, bring them home. And you'll see individual posters of the different hostages. And it brings it home. It makes it so personal. These are just people. Just human beings, just like us, men, women, young women, older fathers, varying in ages. So the first picture I'm going to show you is just a picture of a huge banquet table that they keep in place in the hostage square in Tel Aviv. And they say they will not have a meal there until the hostages are home and they can bring them and they have a meal there. From there, we went to the Hostage Crisis Center, and the first thing you see is posters of all the hostages that were taken. Next, you see this lady who is in charge of the entire center, and I want you to hear her words.
I don't believe I'm saying it. He never heard this ever from me.
So let's enter. Please look on the right-hand side. You're going to see Malki Shem Tov, Omer's father, and he's not in the state to enter in a room with us. That's the truth, and I don't know to say anything. Building hope here, but today you won't see the hope.
You see, what she's saying is that particular day they'd found out about how many more hostages were dead, and they had just lost all hope. So we were going to meet with the father of one of the hostages, and she was telling us he can't do it. The hostage families would come there sometimes every day just to have some place to go with their loved ones 50 miles away in tunnels somewhere, in caves somewhere, by these animals. Again, animals don't even treat their species that way. But she said he won't be able to meet with you. So we went on up and we sat down in the conference room, and she talked to us more and more. And she said, wait a minute, there's a young man named Eli whose brother is a hostage, and maybe he'll come in and talk to us. So Eli came in. He was 27 or 28. His younger brother was 23. I think he was at the Nova concert, and he was taken as a hostage, and he was still a hostage. He'd been there for a year, and they were hoping he would be able to come home for his birthday later in December. He didn't make it. I don't even know if he's alive. But Eli came in, and he spoke with us, and then we shot a short video with Eli. Again, these are my cell phone videos, so hats off to my producer, David Blaylock, for even being able to pull this together in some way. But these were videos. This is a video of him speaking to President Biden, to our senators in South Carolina, thanking them and asking them to continue to help with this.
What you're doing, what you did for the hostages. And I encourage you to keep doing that. Do whatever you can. Tell Donald Trump. Do whatever you can to bring back the hostages as soon as possible. There are so many still alive and they can be saved. And I hope Evyatar, my little brother, will be here to celebrate with us, also right there, celebrate with us his birthday on December 28th. Thank you. What you're doing and what you did for the hostages. And I encourage you to keep doing that. Do whatever you can. Tell Donald Trump. Do whatever you can to bring back the hostages as soon as possible. There are so many still alive and they can be saved. And I hope Evyatar, my little brother, will be here to celebrate with us, also right there, celebrate with us his birthday on December 28th. Thank you.
This is a picture of just two of the hostages, and I was in the Hostage Crisis Center, and I thought, well, I'm just going to take a picture from my own recollection to remember these faces of these folks that were at this Nova concert that were taken hostage and were still hostages. So as I told you earlier, everywhere you go, you see, bring him home, bring her home. Now, the next video is just a short clip of a CBS special that they did. There was a special done, and I want you to consider going and watching this, but just listen to this first. It's a very short, less than a minute clip.
We are coming up on 1 year since the horrific October 7th Hamas terror attacks inside of Israel, and we are getting an inside look at what happened on that day in a new documentary telling the stories of people who survived a murderous multi-hour rampage at the Nova Music Festival. And the clip you're about to see, the documentary is called We Will Dance Again. Two festival goers describe the moment they encountered terrorists while trying to flee the festival in their car. And as you may expect, this is upsetting to watch.
אנחנו ב-130, 140, בורחים על נפשנו לכיוון דרום, ושם מתחיל הסטרס האמיתי.
פתאום אני רואה מולי, במרחק של 300-400 מטר, אני רואה רכבים עומדים על הכביש.
ויש שתיקה ברכב. שתיקה לגמרי של איזה שנייה. ואני אומר לתמיר, זה נראה לך מחבלים? והוא שואל אותי, זה נראה לך מחבלים?
ואז מתחיל ירי על האוטו.
The terrorists killed one person in that vehicle. Tamir Lashitz and Yuval Simon Tov fled on foot. Tamir was able to find safety in a shelter. Yuval was shot twice in the back while running away, and he joins us now, along with the documentary's director, Yariv Moser. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
What is it? More than 360 people murdered that day at the festival alone. Dozens others kidnapped, taken to Gaza.
I just wanted you to see that so that you would see CBS. the documentary is We Will Dance Again. We Will Dance Again. And I encourage you, of course, you're going to have some backbone to watch this, because it's they don't show you a lot of violence, but you get a sense of what happened to these young folks who were at this all-night party, this all-night concert. And that was one of the difficult experiences. As we were leaving the Hostage Crisis Center, we saw this young lady who was the face of this Hamas attack at the concert. This was in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times, the London Times, of her being carried off by Hamas terrorists. She had been freed, but she comes to the Hostage Crisis Center every day to do what she can, because her boyfriend, Sashi, is still a hostage. Can you imagine that? Just look at that sweet face, who survived the horrific, horrible treatment that she got when she was a hostage. Now, we visited a town called Sderot, S-D-E-R-O-T. About 30,000 population. The terrorists came in that morning at 6:29. They came in. The municipal cameras have pictures of them coming in on the back of pickup trucks, armed to the teeth with machine guns. They were out in the streets, out in the intersection, which I'll show you in a minute, just randomly shooting people before they ever came into this town of Sderot. The first thing they did when they came in, there was a van with 15, 16 retirees. They call them pensioners in Israel. And they were coming to pick up a friend. They were having a day trip over to the Dead Sea, which, because Israel's so small, you can take a day trip from one spot all the way over to the Dead Sea and back. But they had a flat tire, and they were waiting to get the tire fixed. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and the terrorists just came up and shot them all dead, just slaughtered them all right there on the spot. And we heard a story about a man who realized what was happening. He grabbed his gun. He went out in the street and started fighting. That's just what you do when you live in Israel. He was shot in the arm. He made his way over to a low wall and hid behind the wall. He heard 3 terrorists coming along, and since he spoke Arabic, he grabbed a rock. He tossed it up in the air and yelled out an Arabic grenade. And as they reacted to it, he stood up and shot 2 of them dead. The third one shot him again, but the third one was eventually killed. We're hearing these accounts from these people. The most harrowing for me was the story of a young family. They had a 6-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old daughter in the back seat in their child seats. I have 2 granddaughters, one who's 3 and one who's 1.5, and I think about this experience. They were going somewhere. Maybe they were fleeing. I don't remember the exact details. But the terrorists shot the father. Now, there was an Arab-Israeli, because there are a lot of Arabs that are Israelis that live in Israel. Everyone gets along just fine. There was an Arab-Israeli construction worker who saw this happen. He jumped in the car to try to help this family, to drive them to safety. The terrorists shot him and the mother. And then the little video that we saw was of the little 6-year-old screaming for help with her 3-year-old little sister, and she's speaking, of course, in Hebrew, but she's screaming, "Help us, help us!" And as these men approach, and they're getting shot at, they're getting shot while they go to this van to try to help these 2 little girls. She's yelling, "Are you Israel? Are you Israel?" And they say, "Yes, we are, sweetheart. We're going to get you out of here." And the bombs are going off and bullets are going off, and they're saving these 2 little girls. It turns out that when you hear this, see this little short video clip in Hebrew, she says, "I have a baby with me. I have a baby with me." The 3-year-old had crawled out. Her sister had crawled out of the chair and child seat, and underneath the driver's seat, just trying to hide from the horror that was going around her. They were saved. They were captured. They were taken. I don't know what happened to them. They're living with another family. But you'll see a picture of the parents, and then you'll see this video. Take us, we'll take you, take us, come, I'm here with a baby, you're okay, I'm with you. David, show that again. I just want them to see that video one more time. It's so short. Here are the parents who were killed. It broke my heart watching that video and talking with the men who had been involved in that rescue. When the terrorists came in, 40 came in to attack this town of Sderot. They had a big police station in the middle, and 26 went for the police station to try to take it over and therefore be able to commandeer it and control the whole area. An intense battle ensued after that. Originally, 10 of the policemen were killed automatically. I mean, they're minding their own business at 6:30 on a Shabbat, Saturday morning, and terrorists come in and gun them down. 6 got to the roof, and for the next 2 or 3 hours, there's a battle going on. The police who were not in the police station surrounded it and were firing on it. They all the while the policemen that are on the roof are running out of ammunition. They're in a battle with the terrorists who are trying to come up to the roof to get them. Eventually, they bring in a fire truck, and special forces came in. SEAL Team 6, our version of it, came in. They crawled up the ladder under fire, an extended fire ladder to get to the roof to save all 6 of those policemen. Then they brought in a tank because they just figured they were not going to be able to storm this police station to get these 26 terrorists out. So they brought in a tank. They started blasting away at the building, but of course it's a bomb shelter in and of itself. They ultimately had to bring in a helicopter and dropped a bomb that would take out this. And so this is the next picture of what the police station looked afterwards. Total, and they now demolished it completely, and it's a memorial site in Sderot. I encourage you to look up, Google Sderot. You'll see the battle for Sderot. You'll see all the details and the horror that happened. They're just randomly shooting people on the street. Now, the next video is a very short clip, but it shows the Hamas terrorists out on the intersection leading into Sderot. You'll see cars where they've already shot the drivers, and then you'll see a car trying to get away and them chasing this car. So here are the cars that people have been shot. You can see the bodies. Here comes a car that has no idea what's happening. They realize it. They try to take off. They turn. They're going to start shooting at them. They're trying to kill them. Then they start chasing them. These are the terrorists here, just standing out in the middle of an intersection, killing anybody that comes by. Our time in Sderot was moving and difficult, and that little video of those 2 little girls just broke my heart. And I've not really, this is a hard video for me to make because I'm having to, we took this trip in December. It's now late February. I'm having to relive the emotions of that trip, and it was awful. It was absolutely awful. So this is the center memorial. This is a car that was bombed out, and everywhere around you you're going to see, matter of fact, if you're looking at this, and you can notice, this is the wall of cars behind it, stacked 5 or 6 bombed out vehicles all the way around this site. These are cars that each one of these has a story, and you can hit the little link right there, and it'll tell you the story of who was driving that car and what happened to them. This was actually on a Hamas pickup truck that had a machine gun mount on the back that they, of course, had taken the machine gun off. Again, you can see the cars in the back. You can see all the cars that are laid out, and again, you've got these QR codes that will tell you the story, the brothers that were traveling together, who was killed, who was taken as hostage. Just gut-wrenching. Here are all the motorcycles piled up from the Hamas terrorists. This was perhaps one of the most difficult things of the entire trip. This was a sister coming to see her brother's car for the first time. And as we stood there watching her, listening to her sob, that was her husband. This was the first time she'd come back. Her brother had gotten away from the concert, the Nova Festival, and had gone back to save people. And that's what you do when you live in Israel. When the attacks happened on that Saturday morning, October the 7th, 350,000 reservists reported for work before being called up. They just got in their cars and went. We heard the story of 2 brothers who just grabbed their handguns. You can own 1 gun in Israel. They grabbed their handguns, they hopped in the car, and they drove south. Story after story of civilians who would just grab whatever they had and they go out and fight in the streets, because that's what you do when you live in Israel, because you're surrounded by terrorists Arab terrorists who want to kill you and want to slaughter you. You just jump in the car and you go fight. I think about being in Greenville, South Carolina, at the upstate of South Carolina, and hearing about terrorists coming in from Georgia down in Charleston, where we have another home and have friends, and I hop in my car with whatever guns I have and I head south to fight. That's what you do when you live in Israel. So we experience this. I'll show you. This is another shot-up car where a young man was trying to help victims. He was shot and killed. Hamas got his car. They filled it with Jewish bodies. They were taking it back to Gaza, and they were shot up by the military, the IDF. This is an ambulance, and I want to tell you the story about this ambulance. It had 15 people in it, 15 wounded people. Hamas shot it with a grenade launched rifle, blew it up. There was a father with his, I don't know if she was Down syndrome, but let's just say it was something like that. Father with his Down syndrome child who was trying to get away. He was behind the ambulance. When the grenade hit it hit it with such force that it blasted it over on top of the father and the daughter and, of course, killed them. When they buried the 15 bodies from the ambulance, they couldn't find the father and the daughter. So after they'd been buried for a while, the family petitioned the government, and they went in and exhumed to try to find the father and the little girl. They never found the little girl's body, but they found the father's half of his body fused with another body that was in the grave because you couldn't tell the difference. It was a horrific attack. And so when we went here and we saw all these cars, this would have become a memorial, 1,600 cars that had been blown up, shot up, burned up. Then we went to the site of the Nova Film Festival. And I want you to just hear this first. It's just a short video.
Murdered by Hamas.
You hear the artillery going off in the background.
There's a bomb going off somewhere.
These are the victims, 350 plus slaughtered at this concert. There were 3,500 young people at this concert, an all-night concert. 350 killed, 44 hostages taken, but these are the ones who were killed, just slaughtered at this concert. And we were so close to the Gaza Strip that we could hear the artillery going off. Now, they would tell us, the entire day we spent down in the Gaza envelope, they would tell us, now if you hear a siren, you've got 15 seconds to get into a bomb shelter. If you hear a siren, you've got 15 seconds to get into a bomb shelter. And then they said, if there's no bomb shelter around, just flatten out best you can. And then they said, but you don't really need to worry because you're not going to hear any sirens. This was on a Wednesday. You're not going to hear any sirens because we've demolished Hamas's capability to fire any rockets. They don't have any rockets to fire, so don't worry. But if you do, you've got 15 seconds. And one of the people in our group said, well, when was the last time you heard a siren? And they said, Friday. So it wasn't dangerous, but it wasn't safe. I didn't feel comfortable while I was down there. But at this Nova concert, and I encourage you to look at the videos. Go online and look up the Nova concert terrorist attack and just watch some of the videos of this because you'll get a firsthand understanding of exactly what happened. But it's slaughtered. There was story after story of people who came in, Israelis who came in to try to help these young people to get them out. One man, he had helped 750 young people get out. He came back because he got a call. I don't know how he got the call, but he got a call from one of the ladies, one of the last people that was still out in the woods trying to hide, and he was able to find her. When he got there were 5 terrorists around her. He spoke Arabic, so he said in Arabic, I'm with you. The IDF soldiers are over there. You go get them. I'll take her hostage. And he was able to grab her and get her out of there and take her. The stories that you heard over and over. There was one story, and we visited this man's gravesite. All of these people fleeing would go to bomb shelters, and they would try to hide in the bomb shelters. And so there were several of them, a group of about 10 or 12 in a bomb shelter, and Hamas was throwing in grenades one after another. And there was a military man in there, a soldier, who was grabbing the grenade and throwing it back, and grabbing the grenade and throwing it back. And he said to them as he was doing it, watch how I'm doing this because one of these is going to blow up, and you're going to have to take over and do it. And he did. He was blown up, and they did have to step in, and we saw his grave. just one story after another of heroism, of people stepping up. And this is what you do when you live in Israel, when you're surrounded by terrorists who want to wipe you off the face of the earth. Again, if you've heard news accounts, if you've been biased against Israel, if you've been biased against the Jews, you just don't know them, and you just haven't been there. Just to show you a video of there's smoke rising. We're that close to the Gaza Strip. We could see where the artillery was going in. This is a picture of the Gaza Strip, and while we were traveling around this area, we went to a couple of other kibbutzes, and in one of the kibbutzes, they told us about a lady, when the three terrorists came in, early morning, one lady was out on her morning walk, and she saw them, and she slipped into a bomb shelter, which didn't have any doors. The terrorists came in and shot her 9 times, and we saw the bullet holes. We saw the bullet holes in trees where they'd shot civilians. They just slaughtered. There was another kibbutz where there were 1,000. The population was 1,000. They came in for 7 hours. They just went house to house and slaughtered. They killed 100. They killed 100 civilians, 30-something security personnel. They took 44 hostages, just slaughter after slaughter. We heard the story of one man who came. He had his daughters in a safe room. Most of these houses have safe rooms in case of bombs or attacks or terrorist attacks. He wanted to lead the terrorists away from his house, from his little girl, so he grabbed his machete. He came out. He attacked one of the terrorists. He was able to get a slice in, but they shot him as he ran off, trying to take them away from the house. They eventually were able to kill all 3 of these terrorists, but it was just one story after another. Then we went to Sderot. That night, I'll come back to this in just a moment. We did go to a military base, and we fed the soldiers. And one thing I would laugh with my friends back in America was the Israeli men have it over us because they can dance together and have fun, and you can't do that in America. But we fed them. This was a reserve tank battalion, the 79th Battalion. We were out in the middle of nowhere. I felt like we were on the moon, and we were cooking them dinner, and then they started dancing in the face of the danger in which, and they were all, look at all these young folks that are just there to support their country. Another picture of the dancing. This is what they call a warm kitchen, where they have it set up to where these soldiers can come and when they're on break. And I just wanted you to see how young they are and how you want to just take them home and feed them supper. Well, this is where we went to the National Military Cemetery. This was the man who had been throwing the grenades out. You'll see more of these, and there would be families sitting by the tombs. Their son had just been killed 3 weeks before, a month before. Maybe they were back visiting. Everywhere you went, you would see people just mourning over the loss of their loved ones. This is the Western Wall on Shabbat, on Friday night. And we went there, and I've been there several times. You can see the crowd. The men stay here. The women stand on the other side. There's a separation because they consider this to be a synagogue. But what I want you to see, this next picture is a normal day at the Western Wall, where you go up and you can slip your prayers into the crooks and crannies of the stones. But this is what it looks like on Shabbat. Dancing. I was on the men's side, of course. You've got the men near the wall. They're praying, they're chanting. What an experience. I just want you to experience what I did on that Friday night. I want to finish with 2 stories. One a little more lighthearted, I guess, if you could say that. And we had the opportunity to go to Caliber 3, which is a anti-terrorist training center in Israel. They train all around the world. They train bodyguards, government officials, Secret Service. As a matter of fact, Boaz, who was our instructor, had a patch on his uniform, and it was a SEAL Team 6 patch. And I asked him, what was that? Why did he have that? He says, because I trained them and trained with SEAL Team 6. So we had an experience where they took us to a firing range, and we were able to fire their weapons. They had a table set up, and we could each, one at a time, go up and shoot at the targets. That was a great experience. Imagine this enclosed area. I mean, it's open to the sky, but it's maybe 50 feet wide by 100 feet. And in the middle, they set up these tables, and we'd shoot at the targets. They actually had us, after we shot a few times, they had us, we would go around and we'd turn around in circles, we'd do jumping jacks, we'd do several exercises. Then you had to rush up to the table and acquire the target and shoot within 4 seconds. They wanted you to understand what it was like to shoot under stress. But then they did this for us. They said, now we are here. We're not here to kill terrorists. We're here to protect Israelis. So we want to do an exercise, a live fire exercise, where we're gonna simulate a terrorist attack. So all of you stand right here in the middle. So we're all standing there. And they said, now, and they started at the same. He had some other soldiers that came in. They started setting up these targets that would have a civilian and a terrorist, a mother with her children and a terrorist, an older man and a terrorist. All you've seen this in the movies. They were setting those all up at the end of this area. And they said, and what we're going to do is we're going to yell out terrorists, and you do whatever you would do if you were at an open market or anywhere if you heard that. And, of course, what everybody would do is just flatten out on the ground as fast as they could. So then he said, we want one volunteer. And, of course, your boy Sam volunteered. And he walked me up to the middle of this whole area, and he said, now, are you okay with live fire going around you? I did not tell my wife about this. 3 weeks after a heart attack, I did not tell my wife about this. But he said, are you okay with live fire around you? I said, yeah, I'm okay with that. I've been around that a little bit. No, nobody's shooting at me. He said, we're not going to hit you, but do not move. No matter what happens, do not move, because we're going to be shooting around you. And unless one of my soldiers comes over and grabs you and tells you to move, you don't move. So I'm standing there looking ahead. Behind me, I hear terrorists. I assume that my friends drop down to the ground. I hear the live fire. It is pinging around me, and they are not hitting any civilians. This is all happening in real time, and I would guess it took about 10 seconds. And live fire is going, and I'm here. I can see them through the periphery of my eye, moving around. The next thing I know, a young soldier jumps in front of me and wraps his arm around me while he's still shooting. And he's got me in a grip so tight. And I'm not a small guy. I'm 6 foot, 190 pounds. I'm pretty athletic. I couldn't have broken that clinch if my life depended on it. He had me wrapped in, cinched in so tight while he moved and shot. And I had to move with him. What an experience that was. They brought in a trained dog, and they showed us how this dog is trained to watch out for suspicious characters, but not attack unless they're commanded to attack or they see a violent move. And he kept emphasizing, we're not here to kill people. We're here to protect our people. As a matter of fact, one of the military, we met with military colonels, with generals, we met with government officials. One of the military men, he was a British colonel who was an advisor to the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, had been there for a year. He told us about the civilian to soldier casualty rate. And you've heard that Israel is just indiscriminately slaughtering civilians in Gaza. It's actually one of the lowest rates of modern warfare. And it is way below the UN's published typical casualty of civilian to soldier. And this is in light of the fact that Hamas is purposely putting their civilians in harm's way for two reasons. One, to try to deter Israel from attacking their military spots. They're putting civilians in these places. And two, because they want their civilians to be killed, because they want the propaganda. So in light of that, the Israeli army is still way below the typical casualty rate for civilians to soldiers. It's just another lie that you're hearing on the news feeds. The Israelites, they're not a perfect country. Of course they're not a perfect country. And it's not a perfect military. But these are not bloodthirsty killers. These are trained professionals who handle themselves. Everyone we met, you wanted to take home and bring home for Christmas or bring home for Thanksgiving. At the end of this exercise, Boaz brought us back into the room and he gave us a certificate. And he said, the certificate reads, and here it is here. This, and I'm going to tell you about this young man in the picture. The certificate reads, for generations, the Jewish people have had to learn to defend themselves. This is to certify that Sam Hunter has completed basic shooting training at caliber 3. Boaz and his last name. And then he looked at us as he handed it all to us. He said, you haven't completed anything, by the way, and started laughing, and so did we because we knew he hadn't. But he told us a story about a young man that this center is actually named after in Hebrew. He was a young man. He was a commander of 600 soldiers. This was back in 2005, 2007. They were in Gaza. They were responding to a military action. And he sent his sniper up into a tower, and his sniper said, I see several hundred dozens of children and women coming our way. But I think I see a weapon. I think I see a sniper. I think I see a terrorist in the midst. Now in Israel, if the man says he thinks he sees, he's not given permission to fire. He has to see. So this young man, Haggai Lev, he went up. He's the commander. He went up into the tower and he pulled back the curtain that they are camouflaged behind to get his eyes on it, and he was shot and killed. So his sister went. At one point, this soldier had gone to Auschwitz, and his sister went there, and she wrote this poem. Here's a picture of this young soldier at Auschwitz, and his sister wrote this poem, and it's just a short one. I don't have grandparents who survived Auschwitz to tell me stories. I don't have aunts and uncles who rose in flame to heaven. I have a brother who was in Auschwitz. But my brother did not stand here in ragged clothes and fear in his eyes. My brother stood here in uniform with a purple beret on his head and bars of a captain on his shoulder. My brother did not ask what would happen today, will we live or die. My brother wanted to provide an answer for all of us, for them and us. But my brother, like the 1.5 million people who stood in this cursed place, is not with us today. He is looking down on us. Together with 6 million other pairs of eyes, he is above us in heaven. But my brother is not buried in a collective grave with thousands of people. He was not burned or dumped into a grave. My brother was buried with a flag draped over his coffin, and shots of honor, not fear, rang out over his grave. My brother is buried in Har Hetzel. My brother is buried with his brothers, soldiers of the state of Israel. The very last night, we met with Ron Dermer. Ron Dermer is the #1 guy to Bibi Netanyahu. He's the #1 guy. You just Google his name, you'll see him all over. I saw him just recently when Netanyahu came to America to meet with Trump. I saw him in the room on TV. We weren't allowed to record it. We couldn't take our cell phones in. We're not even allowed to talk about what he talked about. He stayed with us for an hour and a half. His staff said he's never sat there and talked that long. We had to wait a couple hours just for him to come down to meet with us. But one thing he said that I'm going to repeat because it's no national security, it's just a human statement, and I finished with this today. He said on October 7th, Hamas came in from the south. On October 8th, Hezbollah came in from the north, from Lebanon. Had they coordinated those on the same day, it would have gone much worse for Israel, but they didn't. For some reason or another, they didn't get that coordinated. A year later, Iran starts firing rockets into Israel. Now, when you live in Israel and Iran's firing rockets, you don't know what's coming next. You don't know if it's a full-out invasion, if it's the start of World War III. You don't know. His wife came to him. He tells us the story, and she said, I want to show you where we're going to hide our daughters if this is an invasion. And this is what I want to finish with. He told us, he looked at us, and he said, I told my wife, we're not hiding our children in the attic this time. And Frank, the Jews hiding, we're not hiding our children in the attic this time. That is the resolve of the Israeli people, surrounded by countries that want to slaughter them. On the worst day, their 9/11, the worst day Israel has ever experienced, 10 times the casualty rate of our 9/11. That is what it's like to live in Israel. My Jewish friends became my brothers and sisters. I've always loved the country. Now I have a deep, deep, deep affection and understanding, and I hope you will too. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of this. God bless you.